SME students. It's Mrs. Marshall again, and we're ready to read Chapter 4 of our story, Gooney Bird Greene. Now today, boys and girls, we are only going to read part of Chapter 4 because it's kind of a long chapter. So the next time we get together, we'll be reading the second part of Chapter 4. So here's the story. On Monday, Gooney Bird stood in front of the class when Mrs. Pigeon told her that it was story time. The children barely noticed Gooney Bird's clothes, even though she was wearing a ruffled pinafore, dark blue knee socks, and high-top basketball sneakers. The second graders, and Mrs. Pigeon too, were all much more interested in Gooney Bird's earrings. The earrings dangled and glittered and were very large. "They're beautiful," Kiko said in an awed voice. "My grandma's house has doorknobs that look like that," Tricia announced, "and she has a sparkly chandelier in the dining room. My grandma is very rich." "Do you have holes in your ears?" Malcolm asked. "My mom does. My mom went and had holes stabbed right into her ears with a needle." "I did too," Beanie called out. "I have pierced ears." "So do I," Mrs. Pigeon told the class. She turned her head from side to side so they could all see her small gold earrings. "No," Gooney Bird said, "my earrings screw onto my ears. They have little screws that you turn." Barry Tuckerman thrust his arm into the air and waved it wildly. Around him, other children had their hands raised too. "My mom has pierced ears," Barry said loudly. "Ben?" Mrs. Pigeon said next. Ben said, "My mom has pierced ears, and so does my grandma." "All right, class," Mrs. Pigeon said. "Does anyone else have something to say which is not about pierced ears? Because it is time for Gooney Bird to begin today's story." All of the hands disappeared except one. Chelsea kept her hand high in the air. Mrs. Pigeon sighed. "Chelsea, my mom has a pierced nose," Chelsea told the class. "Oh no," Kiko wailed. "I'm going to be sick." "Shh," the other children said. When the class was quiet, Gooney Bird began her Monday story. The Prince, the Palace, and the Diamond Earrings. Once upon a time, before she moved to Water Tower, when she still lived in China, Gooney Bird Greene was on her front porch playing Monopoly against herself. Gooney Bird number 1, the Thimble, owned all 4 railroads and St. Charles Place, which she liked because it was magenta. Gooney Bird number 2, the car, was having a harder time of it. She owned Atlantic Avenue and Pennsylvania Avenue, and she liked the combination of yellow and green. She also owned both Waterworks and the electric company, but unfortunately she was in jail. Suddenly, just as Gooney Bird number 2 tried unsuccessfully for the second time to throw doubles and get out of jail, she heard someone calling loudly, "Napoleon is missing!" It was the prince, who lived next door. Hands flew up into the air, and Gooney Bird looked impatiently at her classmates. "Are these really, really important questions?" she asked, "because I have just barely started the story." One by one, most of the hands went back down. Mrs. Pigeon had picked up the encyclopedia. "Gooney Bird," Mrs. Pigeon said, "I have a feeling you know this already, but Napoleon Bonaparte," she turned to the class, "he was the Emperor of France," she explained. "Ooh," Kiko said, "I love emperors." Mrs. Pigeon, still looking at the encyclopedia, went on. "Napoleon was born in 1769. That's more than 200 years ago." "Mrs. Pigeon! Mrs. Pigeon!" Barry Tuckerman was halfway out of his seat, waving his hand. "Yes, Barry. My grandmother once saw an emperor butterfly, and now it's extinct. It was purple," Barry Tuckerman said. Gooney Bird sighed. Do you want to hear this story or not? She asked. I can't wear these earrings all day. They're very heavy. Yes, we do, Mrs. Pigeon said. Please go on. Ready? Gooney Bird asked the class. Everyone was ready, so Gooney Bird continued. Gooney Bird, the prince called, sounding very distressed. Napoleon has disappeared. Can you help us find him? Gooney Bird carefully tucked all of the Monopoly money under the edge of the board so that it wouldn't blow away. There was a slight breeze. She had had problems with money blowing away in the past. She kept her own money collection, which she carried with her at all times, safely contained in a Ziploc bag. Then Gooney Bird set out to look for clues that might reveal the whereabouts of Napoleon. Napoleon was not the Emperor of France. He was a large black poodle. Every hand in the second grade classroom shot up, even Felicia Ann's. I knew that would happen, Gooney Bird said. I just knew it. Time for an intermission. Mrs. Pigeon, do you want to deal with this? Mrs. Pigeon nodded. She thought for a moment, and then she announced, Every child who has a poodle, put your hand down. 4 hands went down. Now, Mrs. Pigeon said, every child whose grandmother has a poodle. Hands down. 7 more hands were lowered. Every child who knows a poodle who does interesting tricks or who gets into trouble or who ran away once. Hands down. Other hands went down, and now there were just 3 hands still in the air. Beanie, what kind of dog do you have? Mrs. Pigeon asked. Golden Retriever. That's lovely, Ben. Corgi. Good. And finally, Tricia. I don't have a dog, Tricia said sadly. I'm allergic to dogs, and my mother said I can never ever have one, or even a cat. Not ever, because I might have a terrible asthma attack, and then I would have to go to the hospital, maybe in an ambulance, and we understand, Tricia. And now, let's go back to the story, because we still don't know what happened to Napoleon, or about the palace, said Kiko. And the earrings? Gooney Bird shook her head a little so that the earrings moved and sparkled in a glamorous way. Listen for the word suddenly, Gooney Bird advised. I put one in the story already, but I like to sprinkle in several. Some other suddenlies will be coming soon. Gooney Bird examined the prince's backyard. She saw a place where the ground was disturbed by the corner of the fence. Look, she said, see this bit of dog hair caught in the fence? That looks like Napoleon's. See, she said next, pointing to some newly dug earth. Here is where Napoleon wiggled under the fence. What a good detective you are, the prince said to Gooney Bird. Gooney Bird let herself out of the yard and through the gate. She sniffed and she listened. Suddenly, and that's where we're going to stop today, boys and girls. Next time we'll continue with the rest of Chapter 4. See you then.